is we're going to demonstrate an abdominal examination. All right. I'd like you all to say hello to Susie. Hello. Susie's very kindly agreed to have an abdominal examination done in front of all you lot. And we're going to kind of talk through what we're doing and all the kind of theory that underpins that as we're doing it. Okay? We're going to film it, but they're filming Susie and me. They're not filming you guys. Don't want to break camera. So this just means that we'll have a resource then that you can look back on, certainly when you're preparing to do your OSCE on this later on this in the springtime. So we're going to run through it. As I said, it's quite warm in here, so if anybody feels unwell or feels they're going to collapse down, please don't. Take yourself outside and go and cool yourself down. And you can even open that door just a little bit, just at the back, just to try and keep the noise down as much as we can. So, in a little minute, we're going to get Susie prepared for abdominal examination. But before that, what would be the things we would do? So although we've went through abdominal examination, thought about the facets of that being inspection. What else? We've just looked at it. We start with inspection, we move on to...
Explaining what you're going to do.
No. So the three components of the abdominal examination: inspection, palpation, auscultation. Okay, so those are the three parts, and that's the approach you should be taking. Before that, we have to do preparation. So preparation would be to prepare a woman for the abdominal examination. What are some of the considerations we need to think about before we do an abdominal examination on someone?
Risk assessment.
So we need to make sure that there's no risk. So what risk would there be to me doing an abdominal examination, Susie? What would mean that I shouldn't be doing an abdominal examination?
If she's in pain.
If she's got abdominal pain, if she's got bleeding, yeah, signs of an abruption, significant placenta previa. All of these are contraindications to us doing a routine abdominal examination regularly because we don't want to irritate the uterus and potentially cause some problems. All right. So we'd explain what we're going to do, which is we're going to conduct an abdominal examination. We're going to then get informed consent because we're going to ask, would it be all right if we do an abdominal examination? And our lady will either say yes or no, and that's absolutely fine. We'll then make sure that we've got a private area that we can do the abdominal examination with respecting the woman's privacy and dignity. So the abdominal examination does not require the woman to get undressed. All we require to have exposed is the abdomen. All right. But even at that, some women might feel uncomfortable about doing that. So if you're building up a relationship with that woman and she says, no, I really don't want to expose my abdomen for whatever reason, if we just explain to that woman to wear as thin a top as she can, then we can still conduct the abdominal examination. And that meets the needs of that individual, whatever that may be. Okay. Other things I would do to prepare myself before doing the abdominal examination? Wash my hands, so hand hygiene, make sure that the equipment is there and it's all clean. We'd have, pop that up there, we'd have equipment to be required. So what equipment would we need? A disposable paper tape measure, Pennard stethoscope, drop tone, records for documentation. And I've got a little obstetric calendar, so who am I going to pick on to calculate this? Any volunteers? Right, so we're going to ask Susie what our estimated date of delivery is.
It's the 16th of March.
16th of March. So you tell us on today's date. So have you set your obstetric calendar to 16th of March?
Right.
So that's the EDD at 40 weeks.
Date of birth. Right.
Okay. Okay, so then you can look round the wheel and find today's date, which is the 29th of January. And that will then tell you what gestation Susie's currently at.
33.5.
33.5. So a bit more specific, 33 in how many days?
Eight, 6, 7.
How many days are in a week?
Let's go for 5.
So 33 plus 5, is that your final offer? Okay, that sounds reasonable. So, we've already prepared, so we know our gestation. So that then helps us when we're actually confirming fetal health and well-being and fetal growth, because when we measure the symphysis-fundal height, we'll be able to correlate that with the gestation and make sure that we're within how many centimetres? What's the margin of error we've got for a symphysis-fundal height measurement?
Hello, sorry. Hi, Charlotte. We're looking for yourself.
2 to 3 centimetres. So any more or less than that on our examination would give us some pause for thought and a bit of cause for concern, in that if it was larger, we're measuring larger for dates. If we're measuring smaller, we're measuring smaller for dates. And that would give us some prompts for action that we need to take after examination. Okay? Yes?
Yeah.
Good. Some homework required. Yes? Okay. So, Susie, are you happy for us to do a normal examination?
Yes.
All right. So, if you'd like to just pop yourself in the bed there and get yourself comfortable. So, you comfortable enough there? Do you want one pillow, 2 pillows? Is that okay for you there?
Yeah, that's
right. So, what we're going to do in a second is we're going to lower the head of the bed down for Susie so it's a little bit flatter. What do we need to be mindful of to lie someone flat? So what trimester is Susie currently in? Third trimester. So we've got, as you can see, a very nice bump there. So we've got a growing uterus there. We don't want to lie Susie completely flat, but we do want Susie to be reasonably flat so we can do the examination. So what might I have to think about doing? So might think about putting a pillow or a wedge just underneath Susie's right hip. Yep. And that's just going to tilt the uterus very slightly to the side without putting Susie completely onto her side, and that's just going to help take some of that weight off the aorta and the vena cava and make sure we're not interrupting venous return and causing any problems either for Susie or for her baby. Okay? Happy? Yes. Jolly good. So Susie, I'm just going to pop a little tick sheet just over your bottom half here, and we're just going to get organised in a second. I'm going to pop this bed up a little bit higher. So, you're not always going to be doing an examination on a bed like this. You're going to quite often be doing an examination couch in a GP surgery, in which case you can't put that up or down, and they are quite high. So you need to make sure that you're offering a stool or something so that the patient can actually get onto the bed without injuring themselves. So you want to have the bed about just a bit mid-thigh height, just so you're actually in a good position there to do your normal examination. Okay, so other things that I would have asked Susie to do before we got her onto the couch, what would I have asked her to do? Yes, well, I wouldn't have said go and urinate, but I'd made sure that she'd been to the toilet and avoided urine, because obviously part of the abdominal examination is going to be in the pelvic region, and someone sitting with a full bladder at that point is going to be uncomfortable, and we don't want to cause any discomfort during the abdominal examination. All right. Other things I would want to ask Susie before we do the abdominal examination. What other questions would I want to ask?
Any pain?
So any pain? Nope. What else? Feeling movement in particular. So how have you been feeling movements? Have you been feeling lots of movements? Yes. Would I want to know where?
Yeah.
Why? Okay, so where have you been feeling most of your movements, Susie? There, right there. Okay, so we've got lots of movements being felt in that upper right quadrant of the abdomen. Okay, now that could either be hands or feet, so it doesn't actually confirm the presentation, but what it does give me some indication about is if we're feeling movements there, then we suspect the fetal spine is likely to be on the left side. Okay, so all of that information before we've even done anything else. Okay, what other things might I want to ask?
She noticed any rashes or any bruising?
Okay, so if there's any concern she's noticed on her abdomen or in general, so no rashes or anything up here? Good, okay, so all of that is good. All right, so that's us get quite a lot of information before we've even started our abdominal examination. All right, so I've washed my hands, but we don't have running water in this room, so I'm going to use some gel. Now, the other thing you're going to want to do with your hands? Warm them up, yes. It's going to be very unpleasant if poor Susie's got my cold hands all over her abdomen. All right, so what do you think of Susie's position just now? So maybe just a little bit flatter, so we want her to be semi-recumbent. So Susie, I'm just going to pop the top of this bed down just a little bit further. Okay there? That comfortable enough for you? So that is reasonably semi-recumbent. I'm not overly concerned about putting a wedge in just now because we've not got Susie completely flat, and this allows her to be comfortable. What other things would I say to Susie about adopting what position when she's lying?
Keep her arms.
So arms nice, just as she's done naturally there. She's got her arms by her side, and that just means that her abdominal muscles are going to be relaxed. And what else might I say about her knees? So, see, to either have them relaxed or just maybe have our knees very slightly bent. And that just means that we know that those abdominal muscles are not going to be held tight at all. Okay, so we've done all of that. So what am I going to ask Susie to do now? So I'm going to ask Susie if she would mind just lifting up her top, just up to the top of her abdomen there, and exposing just her tummy there. Okay, perfect. So, you comfortable enough there? Right, so we can then see the uterus, or the abdomen in all its glory, and that gives us an idea of the uterus underneath. So, what can we tell from looking at the abdomen just now? What are we looking for? Shape? Okay, so what shape would we expect to see? So an ovoid shape would be a reasonable one. Almost like an egg, an upturned egg with the point lower down towards the pelvis. So we're looking for the broader part coming down towards a point. And that would indicate that we've got hopefully a longitudinal lie, because our uterus shape is ovoid. And looking at Susie's shape, it isn't completely ovoid, is it? No. It looks slightly broader than it does actually ovoid. So it looks slightly wider than we would expect. So what might that indicate? So it might indicate that we've got a baby who is either lying across, so completely transverse, or more commonly oblique lie. So we've got something that just means the shape of the abdomen isn't completely ovoid. What else affects the shape of the abdomen? Not usually. So the Leica volumes would alter the shape and size of the abdomen. Good. What else? Multiple births. So Susie's assured me she's just having one. So we've got a singleton pregnancy here. So we've just got one fetus in utero. But if we had more than one, then that would obviously change the shape. Okay, what else might affect the shape and size?
If the fetus spine is against
the mother.
So what would we expect to see? So we'd expect to see a saucer-like depression in the abdomen round about the umbilicus, which would indicate usually that we've got the fetal spine resting alongside the maternal spine. So we've got an occipital posterior position. And we've all got the fetal limbs coming at the front there. So that would allow us to have that kind of depression there. What other things are we looking at on the abdomen? You mentioned about it earlier. So looking for any signs of pregnancy. So we're looking for linea nigra, or we're looking for striae gravidarum. And if it's stretch marks from a previous pregnancy, we call them striae albicans because they're whiter. Striae gravidarum tend to be redder and fresher looking. Okay, and Susie really doesn't have very much of that at all, just very slight striae gravidarum from during this pregnancy. No, they are. They're very, very, very faint only in this pregnancy. What other things might we look for in the abdomen just in inspection? Previous scars. So we're looking to see, is there any obvious scars from abdominal surgery, which is, there's nothing obvious here at all. And we'd obviously look further down to see if there was a section scar as well, a Fannin-style incision down at the bikini line further down. Okay. What else might we see when we're inspecting the abdomen?
If the belly button's popped out.
Okay. Is that a worry? No. So whether it's an innie or an outie doesn't really matter too much, but yeah, so we'd look at the general shape of that. But what else might we see happening during this? Yeah, so we might actually see fetal movements happening when we're actually looking and inspecting the abdomen. Other things that may affect the size are uterine fibroids. So any other masses in the abdomen might give us an irregular contour to the abdomen, might look unusual from that perspective. Okay, so we've looked and inspected and everything looks fairly normal. What's the next thing we have to do? So we've done inspection. What are we moving on to? Palpation. So what's the first thing we're going to do in our palpation? Fundal height. So in order to do the fundus, So in order to do our fundal height measurement, we have to identify where the fundus is. So how am I going to do that? Okay, so I'm going to use the side of my hand, the whole hand there, and I'm going to start where? Anatomical landmark, what is it? Xiphisternum. Okay, so xiphisternum just here, and we're going to very gradually and gently palpate down until we can feel the fundus, the top of the uterus there, which feels firm in comparison to the tissue roundabout. Okay, so very gentle all the way down until we can feel the top of the uterus there. Okay, now, if we think about the landmarks, we expect that if we felt the fundus just above the symphysis pubis, how many weeks gestation would we expect that pregnancy to be? About 12 weeks, yep. Midway between the umbilicus and symphysis pubis? 16 weeks. At the umbilicus? 24 weeks. At the base of the ribs, so the costal margin, so midway between the xiphisternum and the umbilicus, what gestation would that be? Yes, 30 to 32 weeks. At the xiphisternum? 36. And then what tends to happen towards the latter stage of pregnancy, when the head engages in the pelvis, we actually have the uterine size drops down, we get lightening. Where actually with engagement that happens later on. Now, one important question you didn't ask about Susie is what? You can feel this wee person bouncing about. Yes! So, is Susie primiparous or multiparous? So, have you had babies before, Susie?
Yes, I've had.
How many babies have you had? 2. So, we've had 2 previous pregnancies, so that's going to give us some explanation as well about the shape of the abdomen, because what's the other thing that can be affected? What other thing can affect the shape of the abdomen that can happen with multiple pregnancies? Abdominal muscles can be slightly more lax, not in Susie's case, perfect abdominal muscles, but they can be slightly more lax, so that can cause a more irregular shape of the uterus. So rather than a nice ovoid shape, we tend to have a rounder abdominal shape in women who have had more than one pregnancy, aren't just primigravida. And the other thing we need to be mindful of as well is what? When does engagement happen in a primiparous woman or primigravida? When? So anywhere from about 36 weeks we'll usually see engagement happening, but actually for a parous woman, the engagement might not happen until the onset of labour. So actually we might not see any change in the abdominal size up until that point because actually the head won't have engaged. Okay, so fundal height measurement, you still comfortable enough then? So feeling for our fundus. So right where we are is sitting just above that costal margin there, so that's be about our 30-week line. So that's exactly where I would expect the fundus to be at this stage. Okay, how are we going to measure this?
Face down.
Face down, where am I going to start?
Top.
Why at the top?
That's where it starts.
But why don't I measure from the symphysis pubis to the fundus?
It's in your hand. You need to get hands. Yeah.
Okay, so you're on the right track. It's going to be less accurate, isn't it? Because I'm moving from a non-fixed point to an absolutely fixed point. So that's going to mean that the margin of error is going to be less and I'm going to get a more accurate measurement. If I was to start at symphysis pubis and then take the tape measure up and try and find the fundus again, I'm going to be moving about and potentially I'm going to start to change the measurement. So, fundus there, the start of our tape there and run all the way down. And what we're wanting to feel down for, excuse me here, I'm just going to put this down. And we're just feeling for the top of the symphysis pubis. So I'm just going to get Susie to tell me when she feels me pressing on the top of your pubic bone there, okay? And we're going to measure once and once only. Because if I do multiple measurements, what's going to happen? Yeah, I'm going to start to bias the measurement and I'm going to start doing it. So I'm measuring at 32 centimetres. So given we're 33 weeks and 5 days, that's a perfectly acceptable measurement there and tells me right away that we are, from a fetal health and well-being and growth perspective, that seems quite appropriate. Okay, so what are we moving on to next?
Palpation.
Palpation. So where am I starting my palpation?
Yeah, it is.
And the fundus. So what am I trying to establish from doing a fundal palpation?
Fetal lying position.
So what I'm actually trying to identify is which pole of the fetus is occupying the upper part of the uterus. So is it breech, or is it cephalic, or is there nothing in the pole at all? There's no fetal pole in the upper part, in which case I would have a transverse lie. So I want to try and establish. So instead of using one hand, I'm going to use 2 hands. Now I'm going to face Susie as I'm doing it, because I want to make sure that Susie's comfortable. And all through it, I'll be saying to Susie, if she feels uncomfortable at all, just to let me know and I'll stop what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm going to start at the fundus. I'm going to use both hands again. I'm going to feel round up at the top of the uterus here at the fundus, and I'm going to bring both hands round, and what I'm going to do is gently palpate round to see what I can feel occupying the upper part. So what I can feel is something reasonably firm here on this upper part here, and nothing else. Now what I want to try and establish is, what is this part that I can feel that's reasonably firm at this upper part of the uterus? So if it was a head, how could I distinguish between a head and a breech?
Firmer.
So the head is firmer. What else?
Would it seem like floating?
Smaller, and it's ballotable. So as I move that, it would move independent of the rest of the fetus. If it's a breech, and I was to move it, then I would feel the whole fetus move, wouldn't I? And the breech tends to feel fuller and more irregular and feels broader. Okay, and this actually feels reasonably firm all the way around, so it feels reasonably firm all the way, quite a large area there. And when I'm actually moving that round, I can feel underneath my hands that fetus moving as I'm moving what's in the fundus there. Okay, still comfortable enough there? Okay, so I suspect from that examination that I have got a breech occupying the upper part of the uterus and the fundus. Okay, so if I expect there's a breech here, I'm expecting there's a head somewhere in the lower part of the uterus. So the fetal pole in the lower part is going to be the head. What am I going to do next?
Do you understand? Or on the side?
We do.
Check the sides if you have to.
So, technical language. So, palpate, but palpate what? We've done the fundal palpation. What's the next part of our palpation? Lateral. Okay, so how am I going to do the lateral palpation?
Continuous movement down.
Okay, so if I was just to do a continual movement all down the side there, okay, so I need to stabilise. So I'm going to place both hands at the level of the umbilicus. I'm going to support one side of the abdomen, and I'm going to use my other hand to work down from the fundus all the way down to the lower part of the uterus there. And I'm just doing exactly that. I'm feeling for something firm and continuous all the way around. Okay, so I'll palpate down one side and then swap hands and do exactly the same. So it's firm but deliberate pressure, but I'm not prodding my fingers in, I'm using the flats of my hand as I'm doing it, so it's not uncomfortable. Okay. Now actually on Susie's abdomen, what I can feel is, something relatively firm running along part of here, but then it becomes softer again, and on the other side I can't really feel anything particularly firm. So what I suspect has happened is I've got part of the fetal spine here, but I think probably what I've got is a hip there, but I think the fetal spine is probably tucked right round to the side there, because actually I don't feel it continuously all the way down. Okay, so we've done our lateral palpation. If I wasn't to be able to feel anything firm on either side, what other manoeuvre could I do? Yes, you're doing it. So we could walk across the abdomen, couldn't we? So we'd start at the fundus and work our way down to symphysis, and basically I would just use both hands, and I'd be feeling gently across the abdomen, feeling for any firm contours or any other fetal parts. Okay, and that would be me walking across with this. I'm really having to do it twice, one in the upper part, one in the lower part. Okay, so that's given us an idea of the lie of the fetus, whether it's longitudinal or oblique. It's difficult to tell actually at this stage whether it's longitudinal or oblique, so we're going to complete our examination and then consider that further. So what am I going to do next? So pelvic palpation. Now this is the most uncomfortable part of the palpation, and it's only really indicated, or what's the purpose of doing a pelvic palpation? So it can tell us about engagement, but actually what it does is just confirms what presenting part is occupying the lower part of the uterus. So the final part of our abdominal examination, the final part of our palpation, is our pelvic palpation. And this is to help us determine which presenting part of the fetus is occupying the lower part of the uterus. It gives us information not just about the presenting part, but later in pregnancy, certainly beyond 36 weeks, it gives us an ability to confirm the presentation, but also to try and identify if the presenting part is engaged. And that's the point where the widest diameter of the presenting part is below the pelvic brim and would indicate engagement. Now, given Susie is around 34 weeks, it's not imperative that we identify the presentation, but it's going to be useful for us to identify for the purposes of this examination what we suspect. And from the previous parts of our examination, we're fairly confident we have got a fetal breech or bottom in the upper part of the uterus. We have the fetal spine along the left lateral side, and so we're fairly confident we're going to be able to identify a head within the lower part of the uterus. And this will be further confirmed when we listen into the fetal heart rate as well, and that will give us an indication of where that is. This is by far, as I said already, the most uncomfortable part of the examination, and so at this point what we will get Susie to do is, just when we're about to perform the examination, we'll get Susie to bend her legs slightly just to soften these abdominal muscles and get Susie to breathe in and breathe out as we're doing the examination. So there's two different methods we can do. We can do a pelvic examination where we're using both hands and we're trying to just identify which presenting part is within the lower part of the uterus, and we've also got the Pollock's grip, using your finger and your forefinger and your thumb, and we're effectively gripping onto the presenting part and helping to identify both presentation and level of engagement. Now that's uncomfortable and it's not what we're going to do in this examination, but we'll certainly just demonstrate where to put our hands for that, but we'll practice that on with our phantoms. So our pelvic examination, we obviously have the lower part of the uterus visible. Susie's got her hands behind her side, so that's great, she's nice and comfortable. The other thing we need to be mindful of is I'm going to have my back to Susie, so I'm not able to look just as much to see if it's uncomfortable. So I just reassure Susie if she's uncomfortable at all, just to say, but I will be looking back and forth as we're doing the examination. So for our pelvic examination, two hands placed in the lower part of the uterus, and what we're going to be doing is pressing in and down, and that's going to allow us to palpate what is occupying that part. We're going to get Susie just to bend her knees very slightly. Great. And Susie, if you can just take a nice deep breath in and let that out slowly. And we can feel the presenting part between our fingers on either side. And that gives us an indication of what part of the fetus is occupying this part of the uterus, and also the level of engagement. And at this stage, the head is still nice and ballotable, which means it can be moved freely above the pelvic brim. And it also gives us an opportunity to feel where we have our fingers and we're identifying the occiput and the front of the head. If both of our hands are at a similar level, that could indicate to us that the head is in flexion, so the attitude of the fetus is one of flexion. If the occiput was higher than where we felt the brow or the front of the baby's head, then that might indicate the head is quite deflexed. Remembering that the head is quite commonly deflexed at this stage and will start to flex as the head engages into the lower part of the pelvis. If we were to do a Pollock's examination, we would be placing our hands, and what we're wanting to do is grip onto the presenting part. We'd have this lower part of our hand resting just above the symphysis, a hand just to stabilise at the fundus, and we'd be doing exactly the same thing, asking Susie to take a deep breath in and out, and we'd be feeling and gripping the fetal part between our thumb and forefinger there. And that then completes our abdominal examination before we move on to the next stage, which is auscultation. So what's the final thing we're going to do? Auscultation. So how am I going to do that? Pinart. So how do you use a pinart? There's a big hole bit and a small hole bit. So which bit is going onto the abdomen? Okay. Where am I wanting to place this pinart? So over the anterior shoulder if we can. So if I think we've got breech here, fetal spine coming down here and the head round here, where am I going to position this pinard stethoscope? So round about this region here, yep. So if I can hear the fetal heart below the umbilicus, round about there, it helps to confirm that I've got a cephalic presentation, doesn't it? Because if I heard the fetal heart above the umbilicus, then it's likely the shoulder's up there and we've got a breech presentation. Okay, so place on the pinards. Now this is cold. Warm it up a little bit. Horrible metal things. So we're going to place it onto the abdomen. We want it perpendicular to the abdomen. Okay? And I'm going to hold on to it till I can listen in And as soon as I position myself, I'm going to take my hands off because this is just going to transmit sound all the way through the pin arms. And I'm going to listen. What else am I going to do at the same time? So I'm going to feel Susie's radial pulse at the same time so that I can confirm that I'm hearing the fetal heart on there. So I'm going to feel it. Put my ear on there. Okay, so we're just going to position around just a little bit for that. Now, what you hear is more of a flutter than an actual pulse. And we would listen in for how long? About a minute, okay. So, we're now going to let Susie have a listen. And we're going to use our dot tone for that. So, we need to use a little bit of gel. It is cold. So we're just going to pop a little bit of gel just along the side here. And we've got our dot tone here. They're all very different. You'll see different shapes and sizes on, but we're going to pop on our dot tone and make sure that we've got that there. All right. And the batteries. Oh, it's switching itself off, are we? Sorry, sorry. What's the batteries going? Don't have a square battery. A square one of the 9-volt ones. I had to check this earlier. So what do you think that noise is? So it's actually more hearing the Doppler flow going through the cord, so we're hearing that rather than getting it. Yes. That noise is movement. It's kicking it away, moving away from it. We have to abandon this to get batteries. And this is the problem, quite often we'll move around as you're doing it, so the position that you had earlier is gone. So if the position is moved and that anterior shoulder has moved, where would it then need to move to? Because what I'm not wanting to do is have to do a whole abdominal examination again. So actually I think what's happened is this baby's moving around, so it's further round to the side and the back's off there. So I'm going to have to then try and aim through the abdomen and try and aim for the chest and listen in there. So I'm going to try the opposite side. Cover you in gel. Thanks. We'll obviously edit all this out. Okay. So a beautiful heart rate. So it's a double beat, remember? Swimming about as well. But we've got a fetal heart rate of between about 125 and 140, which is absolutely perfect. And that's what you'll be listening for. So at this stage, obviously there's still plenty of time for this baby to move all over the place. So the position will change actually during the abdominal examination, particularly when we've got a mum who's had babies before and there's plenty of space for the baby to move. Although in Susie's case, it's really just all baby and fluid. There's nothing else there because obviously Susie's very slim. If you had a mum who was carrying quite a lot of subcutaneous fat, that can make auscultation of the fetal heart very difficult. It can also make palpation of the fetal parts really difficult. So we need to be mindful of that at this stage, because actually all we really want to establish at this stage is fetal growth and well-being. Is the fetus growing at the appropriate rate? Have we got any concerns with fetal growth? But actually presentation, position and lie is less important really until we get to the stage where we're getting close to the onset of labour. Okay? Any questions about that? Perfect, thank you. So we'll obviously clean Susie up here. All this nourishing aqua gel, it's absolutely horrible and gets everywhere. Try not to put it in the belly button. So what would you be saying to Susie after that? What would I be telling Susie after that? That's Susie, and put your top back on there.
Tell you what you found.
Okay, so we're going to explain our findings. Could you put this bed down so Susie can get off it without me? Absolutely. So that's you get fit mums who just come straight out of that bed, launch themselves out. So we'd obviously explain to Susie our findings in the abdominal examination. What else are we going to do? So document our findings, make sure that we're recording all our findings in those notes. And actually, a better indicator of fetal well-being is what? Fetal movements and heart rate. Movements, yeah. Because a fetus is moving, is getting plenty of oxygen, the muscles are being well supplied, and so that fetus is actually healthy and wriggling about and quite happy. Mums who report reduction in fetal movements, even with a normal fetal heart rate, is always a concern. Okay, the fetal heart rate just tells us part of the picture. Okay, so we'd explain that we find that our baby is growing very well. Symptoms of fundal height is normal within normal measurements. Position is variable, but is between an oblique and a longitudinal lie, is moving and active during the examination, and certainly it would appear we've got a head in the lower part of the uterus, but it's free and it's still moving about very nicely, and that we've also had a nice regular fetal heart rate heard there as well as fetal movement. So we've got no concerns at this stage, and Susie's pregnancy is progressing very nicely. All right. Anything else?
So what's the earliest you can hear you can auscultate?
You shouldn't really be auscultating before 24 weeks. You could listen probably with some difficulty from about 16 to 18 weeks, but we wouldn't routinely auscultate the fetal heart until much later in the pregnancy, because actually it doesn't tell us a great deal. So actually it's more important that we get fetal movements, but it's reassuring for mums and dads to hear the fetal heart rate during the examination. It's all very well for me to be able to listen to it, but it's really important for mum and dad to be able to hear that as well. But it's not something we do routinely every single visit, and certainly we're not really checking symptoms of fundal height until 24 weeks pregnancy. We're not checking presentation until 36 weeks, so we're not really listening to fetal heart rate all of the time, unless the mum actually wants to know. But as long as there's plenty of fetal movements, that's reassuring.
So I was going to ask, if you feel baby moving,
Yes, yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah, that's a tricky bit. You know, you're trying to listen to a fetal heart, and it might be in an awkward position, and it's quite difficult. And the more time you're spending doing that, you may well actually cause more anxiety and distress in an otherwise healthy pregnancy. But practice will vary. You'll see midwives doing various things in there, but we've got guidance from NICE, and we've got guidance from RCOG giving us some advice about what should we do at each stage. Okay. So I'd like to say thank you to Susie. Thank you, Susie, for the volunteer. That was great. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Susie. That's super. Cheers. Okay.